Normandy, France, June 1944. To this point in the battle, La Val d'Allemant has been an exposition in the dichotomy of war. The pace and pitch of combat during the preceding half hour has fluctuated from hectic to lethargic. In the last few minutes, the only significant action to take place has been that of opposing mortar sections trading blows. For the stranded Wehrmacht force calling itself Kampfgruppe Eckel, the current stagnation denotes a limited degree of strategic success. For the Americans of Company B, on the other hand, inertia is the true adversary. They can ill afford to forfeit the single most valuable component of any engagement, that being battlefield initiative. The time is 10:50 hours. Given the disastrous effects of the German artillery strike on Point Amos, Company B is left with only a single viable option of maneuver, assaulting from the northwest. Despite having forced the enemy's west flank contingent to abandon the crown of Point Andy, German armor and a group of fanatical holdouts still hinder progress towards capture of the West Bluff. Captain Dorn is forced to adapt.
I was faced with a conundrum. Due to the vigilance of the enemy Stooges, a full frontal assault on Point Andy would be extremely hazardous. Similarly, a southward transition through the irrigation ditch would expose the troops to direct fire from the recently confirmed enemy soldiers in Armand. Allowing 2nd Platoon to remain static within the ditch was not an option either. They were simply too susceptible to incoming mortars. Therefore, I ordered the unit to commence a more methodical advance into the Vale, via the northwest crop field.
Eschew the tactical posturing, a single key event has gone relatively unnoticed. The American sniper on Hill 146 has deliberately risen from cover, thereby becoming an enticing target to the two holdouts still lingering on Point Andy. Driven by revenge, these fanatics can't resist engaging the man responsible for vanquishing their comrades. However, their angst is foolhardy. In one fluid motion, Butch levels his rifle, singles out a target, and eliminates another enemy soldier with expert efficiency. The lone survivor, who happens to be the fanatics' ringleader, finally retreats from the crest of the bluff. He descends the reverse slope in clear view of a squad of 1st Platoon GIs who elect to harass his escape. After briefly taking cover, the medic sniping fanatic completes his jaunt to the foot of the hill, where he rejoins the remnants of the displaced west flank contingent. Now that the crown of Point Andy has been purged of enemy troops, prospective targets are lacking. Captain Dorn issues new orders to Butch that baffle him. The message? Relocate to Point Amos. He and his spotter promptly evacuate Hill 146, oblivious to the fate of their companion, the sniper nicknamed Sundance. Over on Point Amos, Lieutenant Campbell and 3rd Platoon are diligently keeping tabs on the partially concealed German mortar team in Allemant. However, being that these GIs now constitute little more than a reinforced squad, their attempt to suppress the enemy artillery fire from far afield is largely ineffective. In addition, Leutnant Spitzer's watchful Stug is preventing these men from rendering assistance to those casualties exposed along the southern ridge of the bluff. They are therefore relegated to venting their frustrations on the enemy mortar. Unhampered, the German crew persists in their attack on the irrigation ditch. Fortunately for 2nd Platoon, the shells continue to fall wide of the mark. The unit goes about final preparations to egress the muddy furrow unobstructed. Desperate to regain the initiative of battle, Lieutenant Eckel directs the scout team to leave their entrenchments and attempt to retrieve the recently silenced MG-34 heavy machine gun.
Ich kann nicht beginnen, gerade auszudrücken, wie wichtig sogar ein einzelnes schweres Maschinengewehr zu unserer Strategie war.
I can't begin to express just how important even a single heavy machine gun was to our strategy of rebuffing an enemy assault. Since the MG-34 crew was no longer active, the scouts were the logical choice to recover the weapon and reman it. Their machine pistols were fine weapons, but totally ineffective at long range. Besides, the belt ammunition for the MG was left in their possession. My heart sank when they returned to their foxholes, empty-handed. The gun was obviously out of commission. Worse yet, we were down to our last operational mortar tube.
Nearby, Eckel's solitary mortar section continues to receive trajectory information from the field spotter. They lob yet another round skyward. This time the shell impacts near its intended mark. Although no harm is done, the stragglers are beginning to zero in on the irrigation ditch. Unfortunately for them, their action is academic. The balance of 2nd Platoon has now exited the ditch and are making their way into the cover of the wheat-strewn crop field. For 1st Squad, however, their eyes are still on the prize. They deploy for a possible dash to Point Andy. Having detected the German field spotter operating from behind the stone wall in Albeit, the U.S. medium machine gun begins laying down long-range grazing fire at this lone figure. Their intent is to divert attention away from 2nd Platoon's covert advance, as well as deter future mortar activity. They are successful, at least in part. The observer is forced into cover, thereby prompting the stragglers to relocate their tube to the garden area behind the hamlet in order to obtain a direct line of sight. Meanwhile, the U.S. sniper team races eastward across the reverse slope of Hill 146 on the way to their new assignment atop Point Amos. As the pair crosses over the dirt road that dissects the two hills, they make a startling discovery. The jeep that delivered both sniper teams to the battlefield rests idle beneath a semi-defoliated tree. It is pockmarked by shrapnel. Within moments, the whole disturbing reason for their relocation to the East Bluff becomes crystal clear. In yet another example of the fickle fates of war, Butch discovers that his best friend has been struck down before arriving on station. After a moment of pause, he recovers from his shock and resumes his mission with renewed vigor and malice. To the southwest, the No. 2 Stug is maintaining concealment behind the farmstead when the commander detects nearly indiscernible motion along the lip of the ditch. 1st Squad is attempting to extract themselves from the slippery depression in order to make a run at Point Andy. Captain Dorn witnesses the ensuing event.
1st Squad was allowed to detach from the rest of 2nd Platoon to act independently. This was because capturing Point Andy was still of prime importance to our mission. I had every confidence in the squad's NCO. However, before they could even step off, a hidden enemy assault gun struck with a quick succession of 4 high-explosive rounds. When the dust cleared, 2 more GIs were lying motionless on the open ground. One of the casualties was the squad sergeant himself. Aggravated, I remarked aloud, "This German armor will be our ruin. If we don't circumvent this nuisance, we'll never get off these god-forsaken hills."
Captain Dorn's anguish for the loss of a top NCO and the dilemma presented by the enemy armor will have to wait. His attention is brought to bear on a new threat to both 2nd Platoon and Hill 146. He and his team spot the enemy mortar attempting to re-establish line of sight from behind the hamlet. Dorn immediately orders a single mortar section to activate in order to counter the exposed enemy crew. Once again, the U.S. mortars play a vital role in the course of the battle. Beating the Germans to the punch, they proceed to drop a volley of shells into the garden area between the collection barns. Although none of the initial rounds managed to strike their intended target, the mission succeeds in eliminating the artillery threat. The stragglers panic and bolt for the cover of the southeast barn. As far as Butch is concerned, the timing couldn't be better. To the delight of the survivors of 3rd Platoon, the sniper team has arrived on station atop Point Amos. The pair proceed to sneak their way towards the crest of the bluff, where their new hosts have prepared a couple of German foxholes just for them. Butch settles into the entrenchment and promptly scans the Vale for the retreating mortar crew, or for that matter, any other target, to satisfy his thirst for reprisal. Within the Vale, 2nd Platoon's stealthy advance in and around the perimeter of the crop field continues unimpeded. The German ground troops have yet to sense their presence beyond the irrigation ditch, nor are the Stoogs in position to view anything other than the flanks of the battlefield. The tactic seems to be working. Still intent on reaching Point Andy, 2nd Platoon's commander takes control of 1st Squad and initiates a daring dash for the objective. Lieutenant Eckel recalls the moment.
Mein Fokus wurde fast exklusiv dem Bewässerungsabzugsgraben gewidmet. Für unser eigenes Überleben sowie die Mission war es befehlend.
My focus was devoted, almost exclusively, to the irrigation ditch. For our own survival as well as the mission, it was imperative that we prevent the enemy from encroaching on the Vale. I was confident that the west flank Stug had blunted the enemy's desire to assault the bluff. My assumption was incorrect. 2 small groups of soldiers suddenly appeared. I couldn't believe my eyes. They sprinted across open ground to the base of the hill, without incident. I radioed the Stug to ask for an explanation. The commander informed me that their stock of anti-personnel rounds was in short supply, and that they best be saved for stationary targets. A lack of munitions was our Achilles heel. Of this, I had no doubt.
The brash and confident actions of Company B notwithstanding, both sides are well aware that Kampfgruppe Eckel dictates all maneuver along the Vale floor, due primarily to Lieutenant Spitzer and his 2 Stugs. However, a polarity shift is now in the offing. A rolling cloud of dust and the faint clatter of metal linkage can be discerned approaching Albeit from the east along Route D54. A new player is about to enter the game. Will their presence serve to break the deadlock between these 2 resolute combatants? Or will they too become the fodder of war?
Sie sehen Märchen des virtuellen Kampfs auf seines der Geschichte des International zu.